So the corporate world actually served me well for many years. I was well paid, I've worked out how to progress while still staying true to my principles. And that's not easy. It's a harder way to play the game, but I could play it and win. For me, something changed. In fact, several things changed at once, and they collided, and that was my reason. Now, here's something I don't hear people talk about honestly. A negative alone is never enough reason to leave. I call it the big positive and the big negative. You need both before you make a move, or you risk replacing one nightmare with another. I'll explain exactly what I mean, but first, here are the 6 signs. And stick around to the end because the framework is the most important part, and I bet you'll recognize some of these signs in yourself. It's rarely one thing, it's when everything lands at once. So for me, it took all 6 of these in totality. Sign 1, the poisoned role. When the job itself becomes structurally unwinnable, not a bad company, not a bad industry, a bad role, badly timed. I inherited an aggressive sales target with client assignments that were misaligned to the market reality at that moment. People misuse the word burnout. Burnout isn't about tiredness. It isn't stress. It isn't being overworked. It's being structurally set up to fail with no agency to change it. That's despair. Sign 2, bad timing out of the gates. So joining at the peak of a boom, not knowing it was the peak, I entered the role right at the end of a high growth period. Goals were set at boom era levels. By the time I started, the market was already turning. The targets never adjusted. No amount of effort or skill compensates for structural market timing when leadership won't recalibrate. Timing of entry into your role matters as much as the role itself, something due diligence rarely surfaces. Sign 3, the post-2020 friction. When policy changes make the job functionally harder, significant travel restrictions at exactly the moment when building new client relationships was the entire job, office restrictions reducing the informal collaboration that makes large organizations function, and remote work policies, well-intentioned in principle, were enabling disengagement in practice. So cameras off, attention elsewhere, meetings becoming theater. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've lived it. This isn't a remote work critique. It's about being in a relationship-intensive role when the infrastructure for relationships has been removed. Sign 4, zero budget, full accountability. When you own the number, but not the resources. So I was given a significant sales target with no budget to invest in achieving it, like literally zero budget. In any functioning business, a goal comes with resources. This one didn't. When you're held accountable for an outcome, you don't have control of the inputs. It's not challenging, it's a trap. Sign 5, the injury that actually opened a door. The unexpected catalyst, I tore my Achilles. It was a significant recovery. After exhausting conventional options, I discovered that properly applied heat and cold therapy, and specifically Finnish sauna and cold plunge protocols, were genuinely effective. And I realized the existing market didn't understand or leverage the underlying science. A business idea was born. Not from planning, from lived experience, from an accident, a literal accident. The injury itself felt like derailment. In hindsight, it was the clearest signal I had received. Sign number 6, the bureaucracy that broke the spell. This is when the institution shows you who it really is. So I was on short-term disability because of that injury. I had an agreed return date. The surgeon provided me, as per protocol, with written clearance, with the date included of when I could return. A junior administrator disputed the placement of the date on the letter and blocked my return to work. So what this moment really was, this was confirmation that at a level that actually mattered to my daily life, the institution didn't have my back. That's not cynicism, that's data. So here's the framework. The big negative alone is never enough. You need the big positive too. Leaving the corporate world wasn't about running from something, it was about running to something. The danger, if you act on a big negative alone, You leave, the relief is real, but you haven't built anything to go do. 6 months later, you're back at a different version of the same situation. So the big negative. For me, those 6 signs I just described were my big negative, but 5 was actually also one of my positives. Those negatives were a specific compounding set of circumstances that made staying increasingly irrational. If you act on a big negative or a small negative alone, you leave, the relief is real, you haven't built anything to go to. 6 months later, you're back in a different version of the same situation. Now, my big positive. In my case, there were actually two. There was the realization that there was a business opportunity that I was suddenly super passionate about, but there was also a new consulting opportunity that I also could have taken. So I had two big positives. A big positive is not a vague dream. It's not a side hustle in its first week. It's something with real traction, real evidence, real momentum. The practical takeaway? Start building your big positive while you're still employed. Having something to work towards makes your current corporate existence significantly more bearable because you know there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? So I took the harder road. One, I burnt the bridges, and two, I went with a brick and mortar business. I'll let you know if that was the right call when I know for sure. So if you're in a corporate role right now, I'd ask you two questions. Do you have a real big negative? Have you started building your big positive? If the answer to both is yes, then maybe it's time to have an honest conversation with yourself about what comes next. If the answer to the second question is no, start here, start today. Have you started working on your big positive yet? What does it look like? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for honest takes from someone who's been through it. I'll see you in the next one.